So, what if I told you that reality isn't what it seems? That there's this incredibly complex world just beyond your senses, and that everything you see, everything you touch, is more like a video game interface than the real thing? What if consciousness wasn't just something that popped out of the brain, but instead it created the entire world you experience? This is the big, provocative question right at the heart of cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman's work. He argues pretty convincingly that the world we perceive with our senses, it isn't the real world at all. Nope. It's a simplified user interface, one that's specific to our species.
And he doesn't mince words about it. The metaphor he uses is that we're basically born into a game. We're perceiving its world, but we're totally unaware of the supercomputer that's running the whole show. Our reality, from the coffee cup in your hand to the stars in the night sky, it's all just part of the headset.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like some wild, late-night philosophy session, right? But for Hoffman, this isn't just a thought experiment. He argues it's a direct conclusion, one drawn from the cold, hard math of Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection.
Okay, but wait a minute. The most obvious counter-argument just jumps right out. Surely, seeing the truth about reality would make us better at surviving, right? I mean, if you see the world as it really is, you're going to be better at finding food and a mate than someone who's just living in a complete illusion. It just seems like common sense.
Well, according to Hoffman's evolutionary game theory, that common sense idea is a fatal mistake. See, evolution has only one bottom line: fitness. That's it. It's all about keeping you alive long enough to pass on your genes. It couldn't care less about whether you see objective reality. In fact, perceiving the full, unbelievably complex truth would be a huge drain on your energy. It's metabolically expensive. So evolution is always going to favor cheap tricks, little hacks that just get the job done. So let's ask the question. What's the mathematical probability that our senses were shaped by natural selection to see any aspect of objective reality as it truly is? Well, based on Hoffman's theorems, that probability is exactly this: 0. Not like really, really small, 0. Our senses are here for one thing and one thing only: to guide adaptive behavior. End of story.
And there's a perfect, almost funny example of this in the real world: the Australian Jewel Beetle. Check this out. The male beetle has a very simple evolutionary hack for finding a mate. Find something that is large, dimpled, glossy, and brown. The problem? That description also perfectly fits a certain kind of Australian beer bottle that gets thrown on the roadside. And these male beetles will literally ignore actual females to try and mate with these beer bottles until they die. Evolution gave them a cheap trick that works most of the time. It did not give them a truthful perception of reality. Okay, so if the physical world we see isn't the fundamental reality, then what is? And this is where we get to Hoffman's most radical proposal, the one that completely flips our entire understanding of existence on its head. The standard scientific view, the one we all basically grew up with, is called materialism. It says the physical world is what's real. Space-time and matter came first, and then, after billions of years, a super complex physical object, the brain, somehow created consciousness. But Hoffman flips that script entirely. He says consciousness itself is fundamental. It's the ultimate reality, and it creates the brain and space-time and everything else we see as part of its own personalized user interface. And he takes this idea to its most startling, logical conclusion. He says you don't actually have a brain, not in some objective, independent sense. It's like a character in a video game. They don't have a little supercomputer inside their head. The brain is an icon. It's an object that we render inside our conscious interface, but only when we go looking for it, like with an MRI or a scalpel. And this idea, it extends to the very fabric of reality itself, space-time. We think of it as this fundamental container, the stage where everything happens. But in this view, it's just our data visualization tool. You can think of it as a pretty simple four-dimensional headset that our consciousness is wearing to have this particular experience. And it might be just one of a nearly infinite number of headsets we could choose to put on.
Okay, so let's just pause for a second. If we accept this even just as a thought experiment, what does it mean? Well, it has some really profound and deeply personal implications for who we think we are and even how we should live our lives.
Well, for starters, you are not your body. You're not just this character, this avatar, running around in the game of space-time.
No, you are the infinite consciousness that's experiencing the game through the avatar. That story you tell about yourself, your name, your job, your personality, your ego, that's just the story of your character. And here's the most powerful part. Your neighbor isn't some totally separate being. They're you. They're the same consciousness, just wearing a different headset, playing a different character. The reason to love your neighbor is because they are you. So what about the end of the game? What about death? In the conventional view, it's game over. The brain dies, and consciousness is just annihilated. Poof. But in this model, death is simply taking off the headset. It's not an end. It's a transition out of this particular interface, freeing up consciousness to, well, to whatever comes next. And that brings us to our final, and maybe the most mind-bending part of all this. If we're living inside a program, can we learn to become the programmers? Hoffman believes that his mathematical work is actually starting to reverse engineer this space-time headset. We're beginning to look at the code behind the curtain. And if he's right, if reality truly is a program, well, then the next question is just unavoidable, isn't it? Can we move from being just players in the game, totally bound by its rules, to becoming the programmers who actually wrote the code in the first place? I mean, the potential here is absolutely staggering. We wouldn't be wizards performing magic inside the game, we'd be coders outside of it. Imagine traveling across the galaxy instantly, not by moving through space for millions of years, but by simply editing the line of code for your location. Hoffman suggests this could unlock technologies so powerful they'd make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers, and it would spark a whole new scientific revolution based on the mathematics of consciousness itself. So, this whole theory leaves us with one last, really empowering question. If you are not just a character in this world, but the infinite consciousness that creates it, what comes next? You have nothing to prove. The game is so much bigger, so much more interesting than you ever imagined. You are the creator of this experience. So, what will you create next?